Well, everybody, welcome to our webinar. Thank you for joining us on this Monday. We're here to talk about water, a big topic, a lot of questions about this topic lately that we've heard. I just want to remind everybody, if you want to get House Bill 810 credit for this class, you do need to be on camera. And we're going to encourage you to ask questions of our speakers today. The best way to do that is to type them in the chat box, and we'll call on you. We'd like you to remain muted if you could throughout to cut down on some of that background noise. So earlier this year, the General Assembly set aside $250 million of the state's American Rescue Plan funding for clean drinking water and wastewater grants to fund projects across Kentucky. And today we're going to learn more about how those funds will be prioritized and distributed. And we are so pleased to have with us today a great crew. First up, we have Secretary of Transportation Cabinet, Jim Gray. Jim, Secretary Gray, would you like to say a few words?
Sure, thanks so much. Appreciate all that KCO does, of course. And right out of the gate, just want to give you guys plenty of recognition and thanks. I had the opportunity to meet during the vaccine with a lot of our county officials across city and county officials across the state, working with the governor in our every other week call. And it looks like this is a bit of a continuation of that. But in any event, let me just say that it's great to be in another project. The governor asked John Hicks and me and Kerry Harvey to participate in these projects, in these ARP projects. Simply to illustrate the significance of the projects to the governor. He wanted to bring all the resources that he could bring to the table to help the project. Now, with Department of Local Government, with Commissioner Keene and with Eddie Jacobs and with Sandy Williams, they've got a high performing team to start with. And you all know that. And so what we're able to contribute, we will. But the good news is that there's already a template here. This does represent a surge of projects, and new projects are going to mean a lot, as the governor says, as these projects are going to mean economic opportunity for our communities in the long term and in the short term. So that's a big deal. I've learned real quickly just what a high performing team the Kentucky Infrastructure Authority is. So without doing too much promotion, continuing to do these promotion, which I appreciate the opportunity to do, but I will turn it over to Sandy Williams. Sandy and her team have shown real quickly that they got it together, and we are meeting our deadlines. We are meeting our schedule. I would say that the good news is that we are ahead of schedule on many of the activities. So Sandy, I'm going to jump over to you now. Thank you so much, Sandy.
Thank you, Secretary Gray. Those are some pretty kind words that you've said. I hope we live up to those. We're going to do our best. I am going to, so I've practiced this, but hopefully it won't be make sure this is the right one.
Looks good. You got it.
All right.
And Sandy, I'll just say one more word to the group here. The best way to view this so you can see the full screen is to do the full screen side-by-side speaker view at the top there. So at the top right of your screen, if you look at speaker view, then you'll be able to see her screen and everybody's faces get a little bit smaller and it's easier to see. All right.
Thank you very much. And I would like to say thank you to KCO and all of the KCO members. This is a great opportunity for us, and we really appreciate you allowing us to come and talk about something that's very near and dear to my heart, drinking water and wastewater. You know, a lot of people have different passions, and this has always been one of mine. So thank you for the opportunity. We're going to talk about the Drinking Water and Wastewater Grant Program today. It's also called the Cleaner Water Program. Some people may call it ARPA or ARP funds. So it goes by several different names, but what we're talking about, what's the program? We're talking about the Drinking Water and Wastewater Grant Program. It's part of the Better Kentucky Plan. So the governor announced his Better Kentucky Plan at the beginning of June, and it does include about 1.3 billion for better schools, cleaner water, and better internet. So again, we're talking about the water and wastewater portion of that Better Kentucky Plan. And as Secretary Gray said earlier, it was funded by the American Rescue Plan Act, and it funded the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund. So those are a lot of names. It goes by a lot of names, and I think that's where some of the confusion is happening. Is, when we talk about ARPA or drinking water and wastewater grants or the Better Kentucky Plan, what are we really talking about? So this specific portion was appropriated during the 2021 session in Senate Bill 36. Again, it's $250 million for water and wastewater projects, and it was given to KIA to administer. So it's coming from us to you all through the General Assembly and the governor. So what kind of grants, what kind of ARPA grants are available? So there's the State Fiscal Recovery Fund and the Local Fiscal Recovery Fund. So again, we're specifically talking today about the state side, but a lot of the rules are the same. So it came as a grant from the U.S. Treasury to Kentucky. It will be administered by KIA. The utilities will be the subrecipients, and there's $250 million that's available. This is not the money. This is not the local portion of where the grants are going directly from the Treasury to the counties, or it's not the grant money that went through the Department for Local Government to the cities. So this is the state side of the equation for water and sewer. Again, we do have $250 million, and we have broken, the General Assembly in Senate Bill 36 broke that down into 3 different pots of money. So the first $150 million pool is allocated based on county population. Hopefully you all have seen either on the governor's website or on the KIA website, the allocations available within each county for water and sewer projects. The second pool of money is $50 million designated specifically for unserved drinking water customers in rural areas or federal consent decree utilities, which are in Lexington, Louisville, Northern Kentucky, and Winchester. And then the third pot of money is to supplement a project grant where the cost of a project is greater than the allocation available in that county. And also we're going to hold some of it for cost escalations and changing conditions. So when we first sat down, when we first heard about this money, KIA is a small agency, and we were trying to figure out how many projects we thought would be coming down the pike. So, straight off the bat, 120, one in each county. Then we looked in our water resource information system in the WRIS and said how many projects are in there right now that are for unserved drinking water customers. So we had 269 of those, and then the 4 consent decree utilities. So we thought, okay, maybe 350. And then thinking, what's another way we could look at it? How many utilities are there? So we looked at how many public drinking water utilities and public wastewater utilities we had in the state. So there's 713 of those. And as of Friday, about 4 or 5 o'clock, we had 162 projects designated wanting the grant funds, represented 47 counties, and it was more than $360 million. So we know there's a need out there, and our goal is to try and help distribute the funding to meet those needs. So how do utilities apply? It's what you all are used to, using the water resource information system and the project profiles. It's exactly the same process as applying for the state revolving fund loans, any other KIA grants that you may have applied for. Just get that information into a project profile and coordinate with the Water Management Council at the ad, talk with your water service coordinator, and get that profile information updated. There's a new section, a new funding source under the budget tab, the Cleaner Water Program Grant. And then use the notes section under that just to identify which specific pool you're interested in, either the 150, the 50, or the 49.9. The project profiles are open now. So we initiated a call for projects that started on June 1st. And what we want to make sure that everybody knows is there will be enough time to figure out a good project. There are some time limitations, but those happen in 2024 and 2026. So there's not a huge rush to try to figure out what to do with the county allocation by population portion of the grants right this second. You've got time to figure out which projects you hope to fund. The eligibility, so there are the federal guidelines through US Treasury, and in the ARPA, in the act itself, it designated anything that's eligible for the state revolving funds is eligible under the Cleaner Water Program. So typical planning and design for wastewater plants, drinking water plants, any of the auxiliary, intakes or distribution systems, collection systems on the wastewater side, storage tanks and clear wells, security like fencing or security cameras, and then any emergency projects for the protection of public health. And then the side structures like the chlorine feed buildings or the chemical feeds, anything that's necessary to operate either a wastewater or drinking water facility. What we're hoping to have when looking at the $150 million pool is coordination and cooperation between the utilities, the counties, and the cities. We're hoping that the local elected officials and the utility managers can get together and decide how they want to best use the money that's going to be allocated based on the county population. That money belongs to the county. It cannot be other than, sometimes they say it takes an act of Congress. Well, it takes an act of the General Assembly to get that money moved out of your county. So it's yours until they say otherwise. What we're hoping is that people can come to a consensus. And I'll give you an example. In the KIPTA ad, there was a county. All of the interested parties got together and decided that the entire county allocation would go to a single project in a single city for a large wastewater project that they had. That won't work everywhere. Another example, in a different county, everyone got together and said, we're going to split this between our 6 water and wastewater service providers. Even split between all 6. Other counties have split it down the middle, half for water, half for sewer, and then divided between the water customers based on the number of service hookups that they have, and the same for the sewer customers. So KIA is trying to be very flexible because you know what works in your area. You know way better than we do what's going to work. And that's what we're hoping, that everybody can come together and pick the projects at the local level. That second pool of money will be evaluated based on what type of project applications we get. So again, as of Friday, for unserved drinking water customers, we had 30 projects asking for more than $60 million. And from those federal consent decree utilities, we had 16 projects totaling more than 120 million. So we'll be looking at those and trying to select the projects that provide an even distribution across the state for projects that based on the social, economic, and environmental criteria that Senate Bill 36 said that's what we need to look at. The KIA staff will be evaluating the projects and then giving recommendations to our board chair, who has the final authority on selecting the projects. In that $49.9 million pool, we've set aside $25 million for cost escalations and changing conditions. You probably noticed the cost of PVC pipe has gone up. The cost of concrete has gone up. Labor costs have gone up. So we're kind of using that as an extra contingency fund, just in case we need a little extra money to help some of the grants move forward after they go to bid if the bids come in too high. And then the 24.9 million to supplement a project grant. We talked a little bit about deadlines. So the federal law says the money has to be obligated by December 31st of 2024. And it has to be spent by December 31st of 2026. So readiness to proceed is another criteria for project selection. And we'll get the information to make the decisions out of the WRIS. So some of the things we know that will be required, engineering procurement will either follow, KRS 45A, which is the model procurement code. We want Davis-Bacon federal wage determinations. The project will have to go through the e-clearinghouse and send out those scoping letters to Corps of Engineers, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and State Historic Preservation Office. And then if it had to be approved by Division of Water or the Public Service Commission before the grant was added, it still has to get those approvals through DOW and PSC. What we know is not required is a federal level environmental review. So NEPA doesn't apply. You may have heard the term NEPA-like, which is the short version of that federal environmental review. That's what we at KIA ask when if you've gotten an SRF loan, you've done a NEPA-like environmental review. That is not required, just the clearinghouse. and no American iron and steel requirements. We've been asked, is project administration, are those fees eligible to be reimbursed? And they are. So if you want a project administrator, you can pay for the cost of that with the grant funds. So looking at the process, kind of what does it look like? The call for projects began June 1st. KA will start looking and selecting those grants. When you're selected, you will receive a conditional commitment letter. At that point, you can get your engineer to start designing plans and specs. Send your project through the clearinghouse while Division of Water is looking to approve your plans. Put the project out for bid. Make sure all your conditions are satisfied. And after you enter into your grant agreement, you can award the project, start construction, and start drawing down on the grant. And then when everything's over, we'll have a little bit of closeout paperwork to do. Hopefully won't be too tedious. Some of the things that we need to consider before making those grant funds available is the U.S. Treasury program guidance. So that guidance tells us what all the rules are. We want to make sure that there's no surprises either for us or for you all where we have to go back in and fix something. So we want to make sure that we pass along to you all of the correct rules. Kentucky has received half of the federal funding. KIA we've filed the emergency administrative regulations, so those are in effect. Those are the rules that the program is going to operate under. And we know what those county allocation amounts are. So we believe that we are well on the way to getting the dollars out the door. We have been coordinating with the area development districts. We've been coordinating with elected officials, reading more than I ever wanted to on the federal guidance. So the interim rule came out on May 17th. And just last week, the compliance and reporting guidance came out. So again, we want to make sure when we put those grant agreements together that we get all those relevant federal requirements in there. And then we'll finalize the legal documents on our side, the commitment letter and the assistance agreement, get those out to you all so you can get your projects underway. I am very, very pleased to have the opportunity to work with Secretary Gray, Deputy Secretary Ray Perry. He's also been a big help. He was unable to attend today, but he did ask me to pass along his condolences. He had another meeting he had to go to. Commissioner Dennis Keene, my board chair, and Eddie Jacobs, and Matt Stevens. He isn't on the call today, but he has been a huge help as well. If you have any questions, you can call any of us or email. And I've put on the slide here the governor's website, the Better Kentucky website, the U.S. Treasury website, and our project profile portal for the Water Resource Information System. So you can go in there and look and make sure that your project information is up to date. So those are all the prepared remarks that I have, and I would be happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Thank you so much, Sandy. We do have a question in the chat from Eric Patton. He says, when you mentioned federal consent decree counties, to the best of my knowledge, the city of Ashland is under a federal consent decree for their wastewater system. Are they not eligible for those funds? And Eric, feel free to unmute yourself if you would like to explain further.
So That is a really good question. When we saw that Senate Bill 36 language that said federal consent decree, we actually coordinated with Region 4 EPA in Atlanta and said, please give us your list. When we asked for the list, they actually only gave us 3. So I sent that list to our Division of Water, and they said, nope, there's 4. So we added that 4th one on there. So the short answer is yes. If a utility is under a federal consent decree, it is eligible for that pool of funding.
Hey, we have another question from Judge Pace. Are the additional funds, 49.9 million, likely first come, first serve?
That's another really good question. So there's going to be so probably yes, the 25 million that we are setting aside as a contingency most likely will be available to the first contingencies that we see. The other portion of it, and I like to refer to this part as we want every child. No, that's not good. So everybody gets a toy. You know, Santa wants everybody to get a toy. We want a project in every county. Some counties are receiving less than $100,000. In those counties, the half of that $49.9 million pool is going to help them at least get a whole project.
Hey, if anybody else has any questions, just type them in the chat or unmute yourself. I have a question. So the counties have gotten this direct allocation from Treasury as well, and water and sewer infrastructure is a allowable use for those funds. And according to the interim rule, the eligible uses for those align with the EPA project categories for our Clean Water State Revolving Fund and the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, just like these, as I'm understanding. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and so a question we get quite a bit actually is, can counties purchase equipment or heavy equipment to take part in construction, laying pipe, doing things like that for their direct allocation in particular? But since the same rules apply, I would hope that you'd be able to enlighten us a bit. But we do get that question quite a bit. Can I buy a backhoe as a county and then and use it for construction?
I do know that generators are an eligible expense under the SRF rules, under the Clean Water and Drinking Water State Revolving Funds.
Mm-hmm.
I need to find out if those equipment purchases are.
Okay.
So I believe it gets a little tricky because it wouldn't be used just for that purpose, most likely. So if it's used for road maintenance, that would make it ineligible. So that one's a little more tricky. Probably not, but possibly.
That's the answer I believe we've given as well. We've got a question into the National Association of Counties specifically there, but it is a tricky question to answer, I know, but we get it a lot. So
I do too.
Yeah. So anybody else on the call have any specific questions they'd like to ask? Quiet bunch on a Monday. Okay. Well, if we don't have any questions, we will thank Sandy Williams for joining us today and all of her colleagues. Thank you so much. This presentation was recorded, so we'll send out an email to everybody with a link to the recording and a copy of the presentation. And Sandy put her all the email addresses or all the website addresses up there. So if you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to get a hold of her or reach out to her directly and her team. So last call for questions. All righty. All right. Well, thank you so much, Sandy. And thank you, Eddie, I see you on there. Thank you for joining us, and everyone have an excellent Monday.